All right, come on in, everybody. Welcome back to the Holler. tnholler.com is where you can find us at the TN Holler on Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, Blue Sky, all those different platforms. We also have hollers hollering across the state. Thanks to your support. We really appreciate it. Your small dollar monthly donations keep us going. If you chip in and grab a hat, that's a great way to represent. Also want to send a quick shout out to Elisa Parker. If you're buying or selling a home in Middle Tennessee, use Elisa Parker. That'd be a great way to help us out. And then also, if you need a lawyer, Abby Rubenfeld. And if you need insurance, we now have new sponsor in Peggy Hubbard, life, auto, or home insurance. All right. Today we're talking to somebody who's a repeat offender here at the Holler, Representative John Ray Clemmons. You all know him. How are you, sir?
Well, I've been better. Pretty depressing times we're facing right now. A lot of Tennesseans are about to be negatively impacted by some bad decisions and inaction.
Yes, we are in the middle of a federal government shutdown, finger pointing and blaming going on. And we're not here to litigate all of that. But generally speaking, Democrats are trying to stop healthcare prices from skyrocketing. Trump and the Republicans, they don't seem to care. And so that fight is going on. And because the federal government is being shut down, SNAP benefits won't be funded. Food assistance programs won't be funded. And my understanding is there are funds state level that could potentially fill in the gap. And you have recently sent a letter to Governor Lee pleading with him to help people out. Is that about right? Take it from there.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot to this. There's a lot of moving parts to this, not only in the federal government, but at the state level. We have the financial means to step up for Tennesseans, rise above politics, and do right by Tennessee families. And that's really what we've asked Governor Bill Lee to do. He's got, great authority under the state constitution to unilaterally call a special session, call us in for the purpose of passing emergency funds like Republican governors in Virginia and Louisiana are now doing. They're declaring states of emergency to put up necessary funding to fill in that funding gap so that their citizens aren't negatively impacted by this broken federal government. We recognize DC's broken. You can blame whoever you want. Pointing fingers is a waste of time when Tennessee families are looking at going hungry as we head into the holidays. The mere prospect that Tennessee families and children could sit down to an empty table at Thanksgiving should motivate us. Unfortunately, our colleagues across the aisle and the governor refuse to do anything. It was pretty upsetting. Look at the federal government. They actually have the money in reserve. They've passed two different bills that's setting aside $3 billion in reserves. And they actually put out information to Congress saying, hey, we've got this money. We can fill in this gap while the government shut down. Lo and behold, they at the last minute decided not to do so. So they're sitting on money at the federal government that is in reserve for this specific purpose. And the lawsuit that was filed by multiple states, I think 25 states, they lay this out really well. Congress intended this, dating back to 1964, they intended for SNAP to be an entitlement program. Frankly, the federal government has the money. I guess the Trump administration has directed USDA to sit on that money to use Tennesseans and 42 million Americans as leverage in a governmental shutdown. But here at the state, we have ample opportunities. Now, they've driven our state up to the fiscal cliff the past 15 years, poor fiscal management. Even with that, we have the funds and can prioritize funds to fill in this funding gap. Comprehensive financial report last year, the combined fund balance, approximately $20.9 billion, is unrestricted and is available for spending at the government's discretion or upon legislative approval. Of course, we ate into that a lot last year since that one, but the new CFR will come out. I expect it to have similar language, hopefully similar amounts. Of course, the governor has called more special sessions than any other governor, creating a mega site authority, passing his voucher scam, which has already rung us up for $500 million this year. He wants to double that, put us up to $1 billion, a $900 million incentive package for Ford a few years ago. It's about what are our priorities as Tennesseans or as a state government. The question we're trying to get to right now is just compelling them to do the right thing. But if they're going to say we don't have the money, A, they're wrong. And B, what they're saying is they don't believe that hungry families across this state, 10% of Tennesseans, are a priority on whom to spend money.
It really highlights the rampant inequality because a lot of these people have jobs. And these are people who are on food assistance. State employees are on food assistance?
Some, yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah. So these are people who work and aren't paid enough to get by. It really exposes inequality underlying our entire society. And I think that's one big takeaway. The 29 million or the money that you're talking about, is that the rainy day fund or is that a different thing?
No, the rainy day fund's, $2 billion plus, and they don't want to ever touch that because they like to brag about our AAA bond rating, and that has a direct impact on our bond rating. But of course, it exceeds the amount we need for that AAA bond rating, which we don't even use to bond capital projects like transportation infrastructure. So that's a whole other conversation. But The state has money. I mean, we went and found $2 billion just to give away last year to a list of corporations that allegedly threatened a lawsuit rooted in the Dormant Commerce Clause, which had no merit. The solution that they proposed was not in line with a Republican Supreme Court's own opinion in a Maryland case. Senator Yarborough and I introduced a bill to address any Dormant Commerce Clause issues. It had a $0 fiscal note. The Republicans, of course, introduced theirs and said, oh, we're going to give away $2 billion to, at that time, a secret list of corporations, including the governor's own business, and then gave them what was at the time estimated to be a $400+ million annual tax break. This year alone, I think it's up to $720 million in year one. That gets back to, what are our fiscal priorities? Are Tennessee families our priority? 690,000 plus Tennesseans. More than 62% of SNAP participants are in families with children. More than 37% are in families with members who are elderly or have disabilities. Vulnerable Tennesseans we're talking about here. And are we going to prioritize them, or are we just going to continue to sit on our hands while Tennesseans go hungry?
What's the calculation that they're making? They're making the calculation that if they help these people, then Trump will be mad?
Yeah, I guess. It's baffling, right? I don't want to speculate as to what their motivation is based on their only responses to our request for a special session and to step up and provide these emergency funds. It's Democrats' fault that the federal government shut down. Yeah, I guess so.
By the way, they literally have that on the state website. It currently says SNAP customer, by the way, customers, to expect lapse in benefits due to Democrat-led federal government shutdown. So this is now, just like Trump uses the federal government website to attack Democrats, now Governor Lee, fish stinks from the head, is picking up on that and using the state government website to attack Democrats, where he calls people who rely on SNAP to get by customers. And I guess basically the idea is people on SNAP, not customers, need to feel the squeeze so that they pressure Democrats to let them pass this CR and spike their healthcare costs, which even Marjorie Taylor Greene says is not a good idea.
Right. So they want to screw Tennessee families both ways, right? Jack up the healthcare costs, try to kill the ACA, participation rates, and keep people hungry at the same time. You know, the fact that they call them customers is so dehumanizing. It should offend everyone. That's their narrative, right? They try to dehumanize individuals who receive any governmental assistance, even though the rates at which people rely on the government for assistance are too high because we have too low wages. You know, you got people working across the state of Tennessee rely on SNAP because they won't even allow us to raise the minimum wage, pass a living wage in the state of Tennessee, which would be even better. Fortunately, Virginia, Governor Youngkin, he came out and said, I'm not going to allow Virginia residents to be used as political leverage in Washington, D.C. And that's all we're asking Governor Bill Lee to do. Let's not use Tennesseans as political leverage for a fight going on in D.C. Me, Governor Lee, my Republican colleagues across the aisle down here in the state capitol, we have no jurisdiction in Washington. D.C. is broken. I think that's the one thing we can all agree on. But we, as state legislators, as a state government, have the opportunity to rise above politics and step in and do right by Tennessee families where DC is failing us. The fact that they're just going to continue to point fingers, 690,000 plus Tennesseans, they don't care who's to blame for a shutdown. They just want to be able to put food on the table for their children. That's what this is all about. And are we going to just play politics while they go hungry? That's the question everybody should be asking. And why aren't these people a fiscal priority of this state? Because every time corporations ask for something, you know, a big corporation wants an airline fuel tax cut. Every time they want a handout, we back up the armored truck and dump out billions. Now you got 10% of Tennesseans, all they want is food. Governor Bill Lee is nowhere to be found. It shocks the conscience. I mean, it really is unconscionable that they would sit on their hands and allow this to happen.
Well, it's a pattern. Nobody who has seen the way that Republicans have turned their backs on something like $35 billion and counting in Medicaid expansion funding that would cover hundreds of thousands of Tennesseans should be surprised that they're turning their backs on helping people. And we're seeing the same thing with farmers. Crisis not seen in decades is looming because of the tariffs. It's just all of the various ways they're basically saying screw you to Tennesseans, but Tennesseans don't seem to want to abandon their loyalty to these people who are causing harm to them in so many ways. How do you get through?
I'm glad you raised that point, and you're exactly right. This is a pattern of conduct. I mean, he's laying the hammer to farmers, to cattlemen, to everyone essentially in the state of Tennessee. I mean, once you talk talk about food, healthcare, and agriculture, you pretty much knocked out everybody in Tennessee. They're all suffering, and it's a direct result. But what I learned, I just recently completed a statewide listening tour. I went into rural communities across the state from Dyersburg to Elizabethton, had public town halls, most of our elected officials won't do on the other side of the aisle, and just invited everybody and just listen. To learn, you have to listen. What is missing in all of this is accountability. In state government, for instance, what happens in Nashville stays in Nashville. So these folks come from all over the state of Tennessee. They may drive from 1 hour, 4 hours away. They come down here. They vote against their folks' best interest 15 different ways in 1 week. And then they go home and they just tell people what they want to hear. They don't know any better because there really is no media coverage, or it's limited. They have no other source of information other than, outlets like yours and a few publications that actually cover the legislature behind the scenes, get beyond those just knee-jerk issues that everybody likes to get clicks off of. The dots simply aren't being connected. And folks, they've got to live their lives. They're worried about putting food on the table. They're worried about skyrocketing grocery prices as it is. They're worried about keeping their job and pay for health care. They don't have time to track everything down here in Nashville, nor should they have to worry about it so much. So all they're getting is one side of the story, and their elected leaders are just telling them whatever they want to hear. That accountability piece is what is missing. And we have to do it. I've got to do a better job of that to the extent we can. All of us need to continue to try to share information about what is really happening down here in the state capitol. And of course, DC is the same thing. Depending on what cable news channel you watch with social media, your algorithm is telling you what you want to hear. So it's a big problem. They've got to get behind that curtain and see what's really happening to them rather than for them, thanks to their own elected leaders. People gave Marsha Blackburn a lot of ink for introducing a bill to step up and pay the SNAP funds. Now, she got the issue right. She recognizes this is a big issue. And of course, she's running for governor. But she knows good and well that that bill is not going to get passed. Speaker Mike Johnson is not going to convene the U.S. House of Representatives, because then he'll have to swear in the new representative, which will then result in a vote to force the release of the Epstein files. A bipartisan vote, mind you. This whole thing about giving Marsha Blackburn any credit for the SNAP issue is completely disingenuous. What people should be asking Marsha Blackburn is, if you were governor, would you call a special session? Let's get her on the record on that and see if she disagrees with our governor, continues to take the side of this president, as our governor is doing. That's what Tennesseans want to know. That's what they want to hear. What are you going to do if you're leading this state? Are you going to do anything differently? And if she's not going to do anything differently, she doesn't deserve to be governor. She doesn't deserve to be senator.
I'm going to go ahead and assume she doesn't have your endorsement for governor. Speaking of the House of Representatives, there's a special election going on in December. Afton Bain, one of your caucus members, against a guy named Matt Van Epps, who has Trump's endorsement. I had a run-in with him yesterday. He kept quiet while I asked him a bunch of questions. What are your thoughts on the race and how winnable it is?
It's a tough race. They gerrymandered that seat, only a few years ago. So those numbers haven't deviated much since then. But we're going to see just how upset people are with what's going on in Washington. The SNAP issue is a big issue. We've got a caucus endorsement for our member, of course, Afton Bain. We support anybody who wants to go to D.C., bring some transparency, financial accountability, and responsibility, and do right by Tennessee families and wake up every day, fight to improve their quality of life. We've got a couple of great races next year as well. The 5th congressional race is going to be very close. They got a big Republican primary over there.
Charlie Hatcher, people should know, he was the ag commissioner. Earlier this year, I asked him about a potential bailout for farmers, about how the tariffs were going to hurt farmers. And he just kind of scratched his head and said he was optimistic. So this is not somebody that's going to go up there and fight for farmers. He's somebody that they're tossing out there because they're probably tired of dealing with Andy Ogle's bullshit.
He's got a long history in the agricultural community. He's been in Williamson County forever. He's got a lot of strong roots there. His biggest selling point right now is that he's not Andy Ogles, right?
Right.
So
it's a pretty good selling point.
Right, for everybody. But
yeah.
If Hatcher comes out of that primary and then happens to win that seat, what's he going to do with the opportunity? That's the question we need to be asking him, because serving in Congress is incredible opportunity to do good. Being the governor of Tennessee is a tremendous opportunity to do good. I would argue that being the governor of Tennessee, you have more opportunity to directly, positively impact people's lives than any other position. Vast resources at his disposal, vast unilateral authority to make crucial decisions, put people in places to do good. It offends me that this governor has chosen to waste that opportunity. Next year ends, he needs to sit on the bench and stay quiet.
Who should people put pressure on? The state stepping in and helping people who need this assistance.
State legislators. I mean, these people need to be held accountable. This is impacting people in every single county. This isn't just an urban issue where Democrats represent Nashville or Memphis. This is an issue that impacts 10% of Tennesseans. Lay into your state legislator. Let them hear from you about how you're impacted by this. Those personal stories matter, and they're the only thing that I've seen move the needle up here is making your legislator look you in the eyes and tell you he's going to allow your family to go hungry.
Absolutely. And also on that note, mention the personal stories. There's a lot of videos out there of people kind of expressing how they rely on SNAP. Again, it really shows the inequality in our country and how hollowed out the middle class has become, that people who have jobs have to rely on this assistance. But I highly recommend people share everything they come across, lift up those stories, amplify them, because these fights are being fought online for the most part. Rep. Clemmons, thanks for coming on here. We appreciate it.
Please support your local food banks. They can break our government, but they can't break our generous will and volunteer spirit in Tennessee.